Well, we're going to duck that music down a little bit. I'm not sure where that term comes from, duck the music. I guess somebody smart like Paul Duncan or Doc Rock could probably share that with me at some point in time. But hey, I'm Tommy Ellison, and this is the Southern Dictionary Word of the Day, but we are not going to do a word today, and I'll tell you why. You see, today is April the 7th, and it's episode 7, and so for that reason, we are holding the 8th word of the 7th word of the dictionary. I'm not sure I've got my math right here. Nevertheless, tomorrow we're going to be looking in episode 8, which would be April 8th, right? Yeah, that's right. My Apple Watch, right on the money. April the 8th will be the letter G, and you don't want to miss it, okay? Now, one thing about the letter G is it has lots of potential, so come back and visit with us tomorrow for episode 8. But today is episode 7, and episode 7 kind of speaks to something that Paul Duncan brought up in a stream of my earlier adventures on this Southern Dictionary travel excursion. Paul asked the question during the review the other night as to how the math was going to work out when the alphabet has 26 days and the month of April has 30. Well, it's going to work like this. There's 26 letters in the alphabet. We all know that, at least the English alphabet. But there are also 4 days that are somewhat unaccounted for in our schedule, and those are going to be what I call rest days. Because after all, 30 days have September, and April's right in there with her. So, another thing we'll do is we're going to talk about what it means to have a rest. Now, if you're a fan of the Bible, and I am, and read it often, try to read it every day, you know the word Sabbath actually comes from the Hebrew Sabbath, and it means rest. Now, some people call Saturday their day of rest. Some people call Sunday, depending on your religious or cultural affiliation. Some people will call it the Lord's Day. Most of the Christian church does that. And most people will agree that it was on the 7th day that God, in his wisdom, created the heavens and the earth and all the people that live in it, all the beautiful people. Well, they're not all beautiful, but, you know, they try. You know, ugly's skin deep, but, well, beauty's skin deep, but ugly goes clean to the bone, right? Well, anyway, days 7, 14, 21, and 28 at CITA are going to be rest days. And so, Paul, that's how the math is going to work out on this. On the 7th, the 14th, the 21st, and the 28th, we'll take a little break from the alphabet, and we'll just do something fun. And hopefully today will be a bit of a diversion for us as well, because I'm going to talk a little bit about what it was like growing up on these days of rest that had things called blue laws attached to them. Now, some of you young folks may not remember blue laws, but these were laws that were actually put in place. You know, there was a time in this country, and I'm sure it probably still exists today. In fact, I know it does, where people tried to legislate morality. Prohibition was a good example of that. Everybody thought that the federal government would be able to say, hey, folks, quit drinking. And everybody would quit drinking because, why? It's the law. Well, they found out otherwise. And, of course, the liquor industry flourished during Prohibition. Importation of Canadian whiskeys, came up in Prohibition, and people started making their own in bigger and bigger batches. And so these blue laws were ways to kind of force people into resting on the Sabbath or on the Lord's Day. And the premise behind it was that Sunday was for church, and Sunday was time to spend for your family. And, well, Sunday was even a time that, you could rest. Not only if you owned a business, but if you worked for a business, then you could take a rest on those days. So blue laws in and of themselves were not bad things so much, but they got misinterpreted a lot of different ways. And if you do a little study on Wikipedia, you'll find out that there are some very unusual blue laws. In fact, in today's modern era, there are a few states, Alabama, South Carolina, Texas, that still have some semblance of blue laws still in effect. But what has happened is that a lot of folks have taken on more or less a local look at blue laws, whether it be a municipality or a county may have their own rules and regulations pertaining to blue laws and businesses being closed and alcohol sales. So, some people say, why are they called blue laws? Because the Puritans actually wrote those laws out initially on blue paper. Well, I don't know if that's totally true. Mr. Snopes said it's not. But, you can do your own research on that. But there are a lot of folks that still observe blue laws in certain ways. And, I'll give you an example. ChickfilA, the restaurant, the chicken place. They're probably one of the biggest businesses that I know that still close on Sunday. And of course, by doing that, it's projected that they lose about $1 billion a year in sales by being closed on Sunday. They have whacked off 14% of their open hours in order to give their employees a rest, their owner-operators a rest, and of course, to observe what was the original philosophy of its founding father, Truett Cathy in Georgia, who said, I just want to honor the Lord and do what he said do, and that is to rest on the Lord's day. And so that's what they do. And believe it or not, in doing so, they've made themselves somewhat attractive to a lot of folks, a lot of families. And in fact, they are the third largest food chain in the United States, behind McDonald's and Starbucks. And I would be willing to bet you that McDonald's and Starbucks are quivering in their boots a little bit, because Chick-fil-A's done one other thing. And if you've been to a Chick-fil-A, you know what I'm talking about. It's called customer service. Those people just seem happy to see you there. In fact, you can always kind of tell if someone's ever worked for Chick-fil-A. You know why? You know how? Well, I was talking to a gal the other day, and I don't even remember what the nature of the business was. I just remember talking to her, and at the end of the conversation, I thanked her for her help, and she said, "My pleasure." And I looked at her and I said, "You used to work at Chick-fil-A, didn't you?" And she said, "Yes, I did." "How did you know?" And I said, "I could tell by the way you finished this conversation." My pleasure. That's just something that's ingrained and beat into those employees. You cannot go into a Chick-fil-A and say thank you without them saying, "My pleasure." It's kind of refreshing, especially compared to McDonald's or Starbucks or Burger King or a lot of other places that we sometimes have to go to. Well, there's a county in New Jersey, believe it or not, one of those Yankee counties, Bergen County, where they actually honor blue laws to this day. You cannot do business on what's called the Sabbath, which in their case is from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday. That's known as the Sabbath day in the Jewish faith and also in the Muslim faith. And so it's kind of unusual, because if you get up on Saturday to go shopping in Bergen County, well, everything's closed. And if you get up on Sunday in Bergen County, everything's open, but some things are closed. So it's kind of an unusual thing. And of course, in Alabama, we still have some liquor laws. And one of those is that liquor is only served or sold after 12 noon, and only in a restaurant, or in the case of a microbrewery, they can sell what they call a growler. I think it's a growler, which is about a half a gallon of that microbrewed beer that everybody seems to think is so good. I'm not a beer drinker, so I can take it or leave it. In fact, when I was in Ireland, I went by the Guinness factory where they make Guinness, and they had a tasting bar at the end of the tour, and bartender said, "What would you like?" And I said, "Well, I'm really not a beer drinker. I don't really like." He said, "Well, man, in this country, Guinness is mother's milk. I mean, you have to like Guinness if you live in Ireland." Well, not being a resident of Ireland or living in Dublin, I just kind of smiled, and he said, "Let me do something for you." He said, "Sometimes people put a little Diet Pepsi in it to sweeten it up a little bit." And he did, and I did, and I said, "Never again." It's even with the Diet Pepsi, I just don't like beer. Never have. Well, anyway, I'm kind of wandering off the subject, aren't I? In the U.S., most blue laws have been repealed, and many states actually ban the selling of cars and impose restrictions on the sale of alcoholic drinks on that day of rest, that Lord's Day. And I gotta wonder, car sales and alcohol, I don't know if there's some kind of moral connection to that or not, but in doing a little bit of research, I found this cartoon about 3 used car salesmen that walk into a bar. And I just think this is so funny, because if you look at these guys, let me just slow this down a little bit. Let me rewind it. Take a slow-mo view of it. These 3 guys, they walk into the bar, or try to walk into the bar, and the guy opens the door, the used car salesman opens the door, and then immediately falls off. The building starts to quake. I guess the building was out of alignment. And just like a used car, the bumper fell off, and eventually the name tag fell off as well. And oddly enough, even the odometer rolled back, where it was only, the bar started in 1845 and not in 2009, I think is what that says. Anyway, they roll the odometer back, and of course these 3 guys are looking. I don't know what the deal is with the moon falling. That's a little beyond me. But apparently the guy in the middle, he decides he's gonna, the lights start blinking, and so that guy, he's a little upset because the electrical systems are failing on this bar. And of course the guy in the middle decides to just kick the thing, and the darn airbag goes off and blows him completely out of the scene. We'll run it one more time. Let's take a look at it in total. Let's see what we got here. Run that boy. There they are. 3 used car salesmen walk into a bar. That is so funny. So funny. Or at least I thought so. Well, I got another joke about used car salesmen. This is one about a rabbi and a Catholic priest and a salesman walk into a bar, and the bartender looks at him and says, "Is this a joke?" And I got one more for you today. It's a day of rest. This is a truism, though, if there ever was one. It says, Jews don't recognize Jesus, and the Protestants don't recognize the Pope, and Baptists don't recognize one another in the liquor store. Well, break time's over. Get back to work, as our brother Leo would say. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we resume our word of the day from the Southern Dictionary with the letter G. In the meantime, y'all know what to do. If you're ever in Alabama,